You're listening to Big World Network.
Delroy versus the Yshtari, Episode 12, Delroy Stew and Other Delectables. Written and read by Berin Stevens. One of the guards picked me up and shoved me through the doorway. I stumbled into a round room with white tile. Several metal nozzles poked out at intervals around it. "Hey, what are you doing to me?" I asked. No response from Yellowshell's orb. 3 of the guards split off, leaving Yellowshell and 1 red-brown shell standing outside of the room, staring at me. The orb spoke. "Close. Off." I looked down at the ragged remains of my Berin clothes. They had been my favorite costume. Yeah, I suppose they might interfere with the flavor. My hands trembled as I started to unbutton my shirt. I stopped. I had to try one last thing. You know, when I said earlier that I have several diseases, I wasn't kidding about that. I've got a terrible, terrible case of hemorrhoids, plus a bad case of acid reflux. Believe me, you don't want to catch those things. "Close. Off," it repeated. I shook my head. "Okay, but you can't say I didn't warn you." I took my shirt off, feeling the softness of the silk one last time. You know, this has been my favorite shirt. Please, at least, give it a good home. I put it into the outstretched claw of one of the guards. He took it and tossed it toward a blackened nozzle just outside of the room. As my shirt passed in front of it, a flame burst out and instantly incinerated it. I stared at the spot where my shirt had been, still seeing the after-image of the flames in my eyes. This earned the Yshtari my most withering scowl. "Close. Off." "Fine." I yanked off the rest of my clothes and undergarments. Each item was then ceremoniously burned to a crisp. Soon, all I had left was my purple sash. Can I at least keep this? It's my favorite sash. It was my only sash, but I wasn't telling them that. At least allow me some dignity. Old Yellowshell stared at me. I took it to mean yes. I wrapped the sash back around me in order to cover the strategic areas. Now what? For an answer, one of the guards shoved me into the middle of the room and the door rolled closed. I closed my eyes and waited for the jets of death to ignite and burn me to a crisp. I hoped I at least gave them gas while they digested me. Scalding hot water shot out of the surrounding nozzles, forcing a scream out of me. What were they doing? Slow cooking me with jets of boiling water? I guess that wasn't the worst way to go, but far from the best. After about a minute, the water stopped. I stood there dripping, my skin beet red and stinging, but I was still alive, for the moment. The door rolled open and 2 blue shells stood there holding sharp implements fitted for their claws. They motioned with the kitchen tools for me to leave the room. "Hi, guys. How's it going?" Neither of them held an orb, so they clicked at me. My guess of the translation: "Jump in the pot, loser." I stepped out of the cleaning room and into the kitchen. A large steel table sat in the middle of the room with a man-sized serving tray resting on it. One of the blue shells motioned for me to get on. "What is this, a medical checkup?" My knees were trembling as I climbed up onto the tray and waited for one of those Yshtari meat cleavers to begin slicing me up into tasty morsels. Instead, the lobsterman tied my wrists and ankles with some kind of strange leather-like substance. Once finished, they turned around to get back to slicing some kind of vegetable that looked like a cross between broccoli and a wildebeest. They put the slices into a giant Delroy-sized pot. One of them turned and opened the door to a round contraption. It stuck a claw in as if checking the temperature before closing the door again. Great, an Yshtari oven. It was nerve-wracking sitting there and watching them prepare Delroy stew. For the life of me, I couldn't figure out why they hadn't killed me yet. All I could figure was that they were following a recipe or something. Once they finished with the veggie beast stuff, they brought out various green, seaweed-like bricks from a spherical cooler and dumped them into the pot. They continued putting different items in and stirring them together, which was fine by me. It gave me time to settle down and to come up with a new plan of escape. I knew it wouldn't be long before they decided to spice the stew up with some meat. About 20 feet away, I saw a rack with knives. Could I leap over it and grab one to free myself before they caught me? Probably not, but it seemed my only option. It sure beat waiting for that oven to preheat to 350 degrees so they could put me in. As quietly as I could, I scooted off the tray and to the edge of the table. They were so focused on their preparations that they didn't hear my bare feet land on the floor when I jumped off. I managed to hop toward the knife rack without making any more noise. Since my hands were in front of me, I was able to grab the biggest, meanest knife and pull it toward me. At first, it held magnetically to the rack until it came away unexpectedly. I almost fell over, barely keeping my balance. When I checked on my two blue-shelled friends, they still hadn't noticed me. They definitely weren't as vigilant as their larger red-brown-shelled cousins. Suckers. I cut the leather around my ankles before maneuvering the knife so that it could cut the material around my wrists. Once free, I smiled and crept toward the outside door. I frowned when I bumped into a hard, red-brown shell. An Yshtari guard towered over me and examined me with those eerie eye stalks. "Hi," I said. One of its claws started toward my hand that held the knife. I moved faster, spinning around to thrust the knife into its abdomen. It ricocheted off the natural armor and sent a jolt of pain up my arm, causing me to drop the knife. And Stella had made it look so easy. The guard grabbed both of my wrists with its claws and lifted me into the air as it carried me back to the tray. It clicked something to the blue shells. One of them jumped as if surprised. It turned and pulled some heavy steel manacles out from underneath the table. As the guard held me, the blue shell clasped the manacles around my ankles and wrists, leaving me splayed out on the tray as if I were on a medieval torture table. The guard returned to the front door while the smaller blue shells returned to their meal preparation. "Say, I don't suppose you guys are looking to hire a dishwasher or anything. I'm very good at that. I used to work in a restaurant to help pay for acting school." As usual, they ignored me. 2 minutes later, the blue shells turned around and picked up a few cutting implements from the rack. They had round, serrated blades that spun as soon as the Yshtari held them. One of the blue shells revved the cutter, causing it to spin faster. They turned toward me. One approached my legs, while the other stopped next to my chest. "Hey, now, wait a minute. Can't you cook me first? It'll be much easier to cut that way." I couldn't believe that they were going to fillet me alive. Maybe to improve the flavor. I closed my eyes as I heard the spinning blade come near my chest. I didn't want to look. The outside door rolled open, and treads sounded against the metal floor. Clicking sounds emanated from that direction. The whirling blade stopped. I braved a peek with one eye. A silver butler bot stood there next to the table, clicking to the two Yshtari. At first, I assumed it was one of the brainwashed bots from the liner until I recognized the LED smile on the face. "Minx!" Minx continued clicking to the two Yshtari, in what seemed like an argument of some kind. "Minx, I could use a little help here." Minx finished a couple more clicks before turning his attention to me. "Oh, most certainly, sir." Minx rolled over next to the table and undid the manacles around my wrists and ankles. The Yshtari continued to argue with Minx by vigorously clicking something at him. After Minx clicked back to them, they stood there glaring. "Minx, what's going on here?" "It appears that they were going to chop you up into little bits and put you in a stew for the slaves. These Yshtari have no sense of the culinary arts. I told them that you would taste much better roasted in a fine spirulina sauce." "Whatever. Minx, I don't think I've ever been happier to see you. But how did you learn to speak Yshtari, and how did you get your treads fixed?" "Oh, the Yshtari were gracious enough to provide me with a language chip and fix my treads. I am fully mobile again." "How nice of them. Now how about if we get out of here?" I sat up and rubbed my wrists where the manacles had dug in. "And they were most impressed with my cooking skills. They decided to promote me to head chef." "That's great. I'm happy for you." I jumped down from the table and headed for the door. I glanced at the Yshtari, but they were still not moving. "I'm afraid I can't allow that, sir." Minx's metal hand lashed out and clamped around my arm. "Please don't resist." With his other, he opened an oven door. "What are you doing? This is no time for jokes." "This is no joke, sir." With that, he shoved me toward the oven. I stumbled backwards and fell inside. Before I could spin around and climb back out, he slammed the door shut. I rammed my shoulder into it, but it refused to budge. "Minx!" I pounded my fists against the door as hard as I could. This was it. My pirate entrepreneurship was going to end with me becoming a roast by the hand of my own bot. I should have remained an actor.
been a presentation of Big World Network. Visit us on BigWorldNetwork.com for more free weekly series, or follow us on Facebook and Twitter. Thanks for listening.
You're listening to Big World Network.